Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rowing Chat Podcast 2022. Believe it or not, I started doing this in 2013. I'm beginning to feel somewhat long in the tooth, which is good because it probably means I should be going around the block and inviting some of my early guests back again. I'm Rebecca Caro, and you can follow this podcast anywhere you get your podcasts online. Our website is rowing.chat. And when you get there, there are two things there. One is an immense archive of wonderful episodes and a very good search function. So if you're looking for something, you'll likely find it. And secondly is the rowing directory. It's on the main menu, and it's a list of all of the people and places where we have found rowing businesses, whether they're selling boats or oars or coaching or gifts or 101 other things, from vacations to, I can't think. You'll have to have a look and see. Oh, software, lots of electronics. Have a look for yourself. I'm Rebecca Caro, and today I'm delighted to welcome to the Rowing Chat podcast my guest, Matt Zatorski. Welcome.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'm really excited to be here. Looking forward to it.
So Matt and I kind of met each other through a little Twitter exchange, which we'll leave. I think we won't go into the detail of that, will we, Matt?
All good. Yeah, sounds good to me. We're living in the present.
Just introduce yourself and tell the listeners and me a little bit about you and your personal background in rowing.
Sure. My name is Matt Zatorski, as Rebecca mentioned. Originally from the Chicagoland area, grew up rowing for Loyola Academy. Was where the oar first met the water for me as a freshman in high school. I liked on the Lincoln Park Lagoon in 1998 as a fun fact. Also, the place and time of a most beautiful thing. So I get no credit, but it was something that I bring that up just because it's such a cool moment in rowing for us that we've got some really kind of vibrant leadership and people like Arshay Cooper, etc. But it's really fun, and I think that's why I think people are looking for kind of the change. This goes back to the Twitter thing a little bit, but so grew up rowing in Chicago, and then but not much else from an athletic competitive standpoint. I rowed for a little bit in college. Wouldn't really count it as much for a year at a club at Notre Dame, but went on to read books and play music and do something different for a little while, and came back to coaching actually while I was still in college. So I started coaching as a junior. And so to me, I think I've spent way more time in the sport as a coach. I was actually coaching basketball for years before I even started rowing. So I think I view more of my pathway as a coach and understanding of the sport as a coach. But so yeah, I think beyond that, I started coaching at Loyola and then moved on to New Trier High School in Chicago for really great 4 years early on in there. Kind of, so I learned a lot from that experience. Really great leadership in Rose Marchuk there, and uh, moved to Boston where I got to coach at Cambridge and Latin School, which is a public school in Cambridge. Really proud of that program where they've gone, and founded the Institute for Rowing Leadership with Bruce Smith before heading out to Seattle. And we're now, Katie, my wife and I, we run the Seattle Scullers, which is our current team. It's under the larger auspice of our business, Long-Term Rower Development LLC. But I'm in the family business, small business phase here. So it's learning all the time and all that valuable failure that we get to learn from. So yeah, so that's where I think that gets us up to date at the moment.
So you're a rowing educator and a coach. And tell me a little bit about Seattle Scullers as a club or organization.
Sure. With Seattle Scullers, I think it really boils down to like basically three things for us. I just like to tell people we're process oriented, we're athlete centered, and we're research based. So those kind of things that make us a little bit different. We're responding to more of what's in the research neurologically as opposed to what our coaches did. God bless them; they were amazing. Like I had really good coaches actually, but less tradition based that way. All of our programming is athletes. So when I say athlete centered, it's each athlete comes to us with a set of goals that they're looking to achieve, and we help them build a pathway. So each athlete has different goals. So I think where at most teams you have to have everybody get together in a room because we're all going to row the 8 eventually, and they have to come up with some more team-based goals. So as a result, each athlete's on a different schedule. So I have some athletes, rowing on the water 3 days a week, on land twice. I have some athletes doing 7 to 9 sessions. I have some athletes doing one middle school, and an amazing. So, in a way, doing things that really meets them at their level. And then process oriented, like I said, the athletes have goals and they're generally competitive at the later points in their career. Um, but our goals remain kind of really focused on the process. So how we build that for them, as opposed to like just counting medals, we're more talking about the quality of your habits and things. So that we found that to be a kind of more consistent pathway to success. So that we keep our focus and attention there.
And did you start this club?
Yeah, well, I'll say we. You know, the people who are close to us know that Katie's the essential component. I think as the literal voice in this moment, like get maybe a lot of the external credit than more than I deserve. But my wife Katie's a All American at PLU. An accomplished athlete on her own, but more so an accomplished business builder. And she's actually the principal of her own consulting firm. She does all the stuff for us for free. So she's our biggest advantage in house. But also like people also don't know that I actually view this as a woman led business because I'm following the leadership of my wife. Right. So I don't think people see that. But I've thrived in actually environments with women in power, and I've actually learned a lot from them. And so actually I'm and continuing to do so, thriving that is. So that's one thing I think people don't see that externally that people internally know very well, because she mans the whole business side. I don't look at emails. I don't literally. You may have noticed that in our like those don't get answered too quickly. But that means 100% of my attention, literally 100%, is on the athletes, and I don't have to think about those things. And she's from whether it's insurance, boat payment, all the things. She's amazing. So that's probably our number one weapon that people don't secret weapon that people don't know about.
Fantastic. I want to roll back to a little bit of your history. Now, the Institute for Rowing Leadership is known as a CRI Boston program where they provide a postgraduate certificate in coaching. Is that correct? Rowing coaching.
Correct. It's actually in a great way going through a bit of a transformation. It got shelved during the pandemic for obvious reasons. Because I'll tell you how it was set up. It was impossible within the context. So they're rebooting it soon, and I'm actually really excited about. They've got some really great people. Um, I'll let them do their thing. But I'm excited for actually what it's going to do next. But it's going to continue in that same vein of not only developing coaches, but people who on purpose will use the word leadership for what they're looking to do. And to me, that's like change. What are they trying to do to bring about change in our sport?
And you were there at the naissance. How did it come about?
Desperation is the mother of all invention.
Okay.
I needed a job. There was the truth is Ethan Curran, the director of coach education at Sierra at the time, and Bruce Smith, they had some gears working in their head. I don't think they knew what they wanted yet, but there was some problems that needed to be solved. Specifically, CRI would lose a lot of people quickly just because they were a great place for coaches to come initially, and they would learn a lot, and they'd become valuable, and they would leave. So, how do we get coaches to stay at CRI, and some other kind of professional development questions with that they were talking a lot about. Ethan had a really amazing, actually, the root of everything, I think, is pizza and beer. He had a great weekly, and I'm really actually very serious about this, that those pizza and beer weekly coaching seminars that Ethan ran were kind of fundamental to that as a learning institution. Um, but I pitched Bruce a thing over the summer, and he said, "Great, that sounds amazing. I'm going to post it as a job, so I'm not going to." and take myself out of it. So he would, since for obviously personal reasons of context, Bruce Smith was also my high school coach.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
right. So important fact. So I had to kind of repitch it to get hired like you would. I would think I was the only person who showed up with a logic model. But also it wasn't my, like, again, Katie, my wife, like, was, I think, in our third date, I was like, I'm gonna go present this thing, and she's like, you want it to look like this, and she helped me put that into a lodge. So I would say she's essential to that too, like another thing people don't know about probably. um but so it was a pipe dream of a thing. I got laughed at up and down the Charles the first fall. I was
Mhm.
telling or promising people this was going to happen. I was not given uh, it was a 3-month contract
Mhm.
to get people in butts and seats, and then maybe I might have a job. That's how kind of it went. So, like I said, desperation is can help. And so the real thing I think early on was the quality of person that bought into that idea.
Yep.
Actually, might not just be about taking the blade out and putting it in. It might be about some other things if we're coming at it from a leadership perspective, especially with a sport like ours that's kind of suffered from some homogeneity problems.
Mhm.
Um, and so we got really cool people in the room, and some people that have continued to be invested in the sport, who have graduated. I hear amazing things about our graduates, the fellows, as they've gone into the field and done and moved to leadership positions quickly. And so that's just been really cool to watch. To me, I was there as more of a TA than anything else. I was young and stupid, just in the right place in the right time. And given an opportunity, I pushed my desk in that room for 3 years and got to just soak it in, as a kind of outside observer to the process, but also make sure nothing went wrong because things were always going wrong. Here's a funny, I don't think no, here's a quick tidbit. In our second year, we got a cease and desist order from the state of Massachusetts a week before Christmas. So I sent
Because
because it was some political nonsense. We don't need to go on what happened, but because somebody had complained to them that we had offered ourselves up as a graduate level degree program when we hadn't. We were very clear in our languaging and clear in all these things, and uh, so I had to prepare like this giant thing for the state of education, Department of Education. Took me months, and then in the last moments, it just took a political maneuver, and they said, "Oh no, you're fine." But like we were just putting out fires in the beginning, and that's what we were. I'll be honest, I was a good fire putter outer. But then it was ready for it to be moved into once it was accredited, and it was as a thing. That was so exciting for me and what I was working towards, and that's when Katie and I made our way to Seattle. So really excited to see what it does next, and it's kind of next iteration. Because here's the really cool thing about it is that now a lot of the fellows have gone out, they've done things, learned this, they're actually coming back to help invest in it, and will be a part of it, and it's in the kind of which is I think the critical component to its future success. So excited to see what they do.
fantastic. Now, out of that, you developed what you call a coaching model. Now, I know it probably isn't unique because there's good principles behind most coaching models, but perhaps we could just sit back. Can you tell us what is the coaching model that you endorse?
Yeah, so like I said, I will rip everything off that if it's good. So I'm specifically pursuing my understanding and implementation of the long-term athlete development model, and I'm going to call it that in the United States. Just this is, I swear to God, this is what they do out here. They are now calling it the American uh, coaching model.
Okay.
It's like freedom fries. I don't know if you know.
I don't know about freedom fries.
But like here's the thing. Like so, there's French fries, right? You call them French fries. Um, uh,
Chips, but
in the
don't worry
U.S.,
about it.
but in the U.S. We don't like France, so we'll call them freedom fries, and like it's our way of like. But it's that's what we do, and it blows my mind. I'm like, because in this case, when you take out the long-term athlete development from the name, you lose the meaning. And it's not just about something we're trying to do as a country. There's actually a long-term, like a this thing has been around for a decade now. It's just now that we're adopting it as a system here.
Mhm.
So it has a history, and the history specifically is in the research, right? So I think it's the Queen's countries where these are coming from, like Canada, UK, Scott. I think there's a big, from what I remember, a big uh, piece of it coming from Scotland even. But the point being, this has uh, been going on for a second, and the first time I saw it was the USOC's coaching conference, which US Rowing was not going to. I was there; they weren't. But you could see this. It was about 2011, maybe, where they were like, "Hey, this thing we're going to do," and hockey was on. USA Hockey was on it right away, and a couple of other sports really picked it up. And it was being implemented across the USOC at that point. At all levels. So I was picking. So the strategies I picked from going to those things were from different sports because rowing didn't even have it yet. You know,
Mm.
here's one thing that we do terribly: teaching people how to row. You think we would be something that we should be good at. Well, we do all internal body cues in our sport, in our country. We tell people, do this with your hands, do this with your body, do this with your legs, right? Legs, body, arms. We literally, that's our cues out here. When it would be much more effective to talk about the seat, the foot plate, the handle, external focus feedback, research based instructional strategy, and teaching how to people how to acquire a skill. That's something that's just being adopted now in rowing. A few years back, I want to say it was when I was in San Diego at the U.S. Rowing Conference. The USOC was lovely and sent somebody to teach us about external focus feedback. And the second half of the presentation was just rowing coaches lambasting this poor woman about like how it's always been done. And it's like, oh, here we go, rowing in the United States, how it's always been done. So that's the thing that I think is really different is taking a long-term approach to athlete development. I don't really care what their competitive outcomes are tomorrow. I'm
No.
more interested in how do I keep them in sport for life? And because this is a sport that can. And we've done a terrible job. Everybody gets done with college, they're exhausted, they're broken, some of them, and they don't come back. And they've gotten their education, they've gotten their leadership experience, they've gotten this great team experience, but they missed a lot of things because they were only focused on the outcomes. And so I think that's something that our sport is learning from because we haven't grown it as a result.
It's one of the earlier episodes I recorded last year was with Cath Bishop, who has written a book called The Long Win. If you haven't read it,
Mm,
go get a copy, in which she looks at business,
yeah.
sport, and life, and is very explicit about exactly the things that you're talking about. But she's tried to apply it into different areas. And we dove into a lot of detail about specifically junior rowing, because
Hmm.
around the world, there is immensely competitive, fantastic racing opportunity for young people while they're in high school. And that also leads to some burnout, but it also has two consequences. One is the natural, I'm burnt out, I don't want to row in university. And the other is, I wasn't good enough because I was a late developer and I didn't
Hmm.
feel that I had achieved anything much because I didn't go to the big regatta, but also there wasn't a second spring regatta that I could go to where I could feel I could, make my own mark at the level that I'm at. And we had a really long discussion about there actually not being any answers clear yet. Do you have the same experience?
You know, so, you know, we just do, it's hard for me to kind of relate a lot to the rowing world at this moment because in this moment I'm just doing things that are just completely different. You know, singles all day. Like I coach. Here's the thing. In the year after the pandemic, um, like from day one and whatever that was in June for 365 days, I ran 771 different rowing sessions, different practices. That's impossible when you're doing eights and you know what I'm saying. There's so many things, but I was running low scale, like 5 at a time. This was in the midst of that pandemic.
Mhm.
You got to do everything this way, kind of thing. And as the owner, I could. Right, I wasn't the employee. So there's some this has allowed us to do things in a way where I've kind of disconnect like, I just don't associate as well. And here's the thing that we do all the time as a result, because we I wouldn't ever not, is we play a lot. And what I mean is we go out without an objective. We go out with a set of safety benchmarks and clear instructions on how to do things safely. Like, so we have a little 1,000-meter canal in Fremont where if for God forbid a kid to even flip, you could even stand up. It's an amazing little teaching. So there's a level of safety and comfort to the learner that they're able to kind of take risks and things. Um, so we do 1,000-meter chunks, take it, turn and cross, go do it, and it breaks it up, gives their attention a rest. There's a lot of research behind all these things, and then they tell me what they want to work on. And some of them just like, I just want to go out and paddle, and I go, great. You know what? Because they had a rough week, like because the kids now, it's a thing. But that's playful. We go out and we splash. They stand up in their boats. They do things in a way I did not. Rowing to me was like a way for me to harness my attention in a way and like do work with people, and it was work, work, work. It was Midwest winters. You know what I'm saying? It was a lot of
Yeah,
time on the earth.
yeah.
So it was very different to me, and in a way that was extremely valuable.
Mhm.
But we've lost the sense of play in our sport.
Okay.
We don't train. We train and we compete. I don't hear people playing. In other sports, and in fact, in our sport, we don't play. We only row. It's this. How many T-shirts have I seen that kind of promote this level of misery? And to me, I'm not in it to be miserable. I actually experience an extreme sense of joy in
Mhm.
the natural surroundings that I have and the people I'm there with that I'm actually really grateful to give me the opportunity to do this.
Yeah.
And all that's lost when it's just embrace the suck or like the grind. And I don't relate to that.
It's interesting the alignment between your description and my work, which is around masters rowing, which is adults who don't want to race 2K
Hmm.
broadly. So some of them are racers, some of them are recreational, some of them are coastal, some of them are many different flavors. And what I notice and what we can do, particularly with people who are new to the sport, maybe in their 30s, 40s, 50s, is that actually that sense of play and discovery through sort of self-learning, whether you're in a big
Yes.
crew boat actually or in a small boat, that actually that's a lot of fun. And there's a
Mhm.
lot of satisfaction to be had with coming off the water and going, oh my, I managed square blades today, or
Mhm.
I didn't realize that it went like that. And that is great.
Yep. And you said something in there which I think is so crucial to our process is that user directed, that self based learning, right? So where are you coming from as a starting point, not an ending point? And I learned so much as a coach. Every one of those days is massively different. And this is also very true of just me personally. I don't know how to row. Like, sure, I've done some things. Like by that I mean like I've paddled a couple times. This is true at CRI. I was so desperate for work when I first got there. I went from being a varsity head coach in Chicago to a middle school part-time coach to start off. So I was like, give me whatever. And I
Mhm.
pushed my desk outside the door, and the program director came out and he's like, "Hey, Matt, have you competed in sculling before?" And I said, without lying, yes. I had sculled. This is really true. Twice in my life, to the start line of a heat and then a final at Midwest Championships because somebody else needed a sub for a race. Otherwise, I'd never been in a sculling boat. So I had sculled twice uh, and competed, by the way. So I didn't lie. And he's like, "You're the new competitive sculling coach." I was like, "Great." and, and so like that was my entry into sculling. Like so, to me, I had to teach myself on the river. I had keys
Mhm.
to multiple boathouses. I was so embarrassed that I would do it about 8 p.m., 9 p.m. on Sundays because
Mhm.
even if other teams weren't out, that I could never avoid all the coaches on the Charles, right? So I was too embarrassed. So I would, you know, flip my boat in the basin at 10 p.m. on a Sunday and have to get home. So, there was that learning process, but, to me, like, I found teaching myself was something that I learned about, self-directed learning, but also the singles, like, there's no other way, better teacher. The water's so honest, it really doesn't respond to anything but the truth. So you've got to learn it, or you fail, and that's another part of it.
I just spent this past week teaching a bunch of people who are already in my club who can already scull in crew boats, but who've never done single sculling. Because the way we teach people is we teach people in mixed ability crew boats so that you will
Mhm,
learn from people who are better than you, but then you slowly, move them into smaller boats. And it was a delightful week for me
mhm,
on so many levels. One of which was one of my lovely students who has rowed for around 3 years, who, bear in mind, we have a 5-day program. On day 2, 3, and 4, she managed to put one of her oars in either the wrong side, or the gate was backwards, or
mhm.
both of them, or one of them. She basically did every possible
Correct.
variation.
Yeah.
And, we all ended up laughing, but she got very, very good at working out how to back into the dock without assistance because the
Yeah.
rest of us had already cleared off. Good learning.
But she learned the skill that she needed for her own personal style now, didn't she? She needed to learn how to back it in, in terms of
With
her
the
thing.
oar in the wrong place,
Yeah, yeah,
backing it in with your gate backwards is
yeah.
very challenging.
No
But I
kidding.
I had a
Mm,
very great video to share with her afterwards of a French former international
mhm,
where he just goes out in the single and he's being filmed just playing around. He like has the oars upside down and he's doing racing starts.
mhm.
And he's sort of like switching one oar over and then trying to switch the other one over. And yeah,
but
It's
playing,
yeah,
right?
but playing.
Being playful, and it's just so important to the human learner. I think one of the things we do to kids in our country, and I don't know if it's as bad with where you're at, but we just beat the curiosity out of them. And I get kids who have to relearn that a little bit. They're like, I should know this now. I'm like, should you? You know, Maybe. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but how about the process of finding out? Let's stay around there for a little bit longer, and follow your curiosity as opposed. And we could get into that thing too, but the curiosity piece, if that drives everything around here, then they develop it themselves because they kind of have to a little bit.
That's right. You've got to be a
Um,
bit self-sufficient, haven't you?
mhm.
So tell me, you're critical of teaching people to row in eights, and there are good practical reasons for doing that. For one, coach athlete ratios and
Mhm.
safety and all sorts of things. I'm going to hand you a magic wand. What might you change that could improve the way rowing is taught in America?
Oh wow. Magic wand. If I could get one of those. Here's the thing: is competitions, right? I would love 1,000-meter races, a lot more of them. Um, it's a lot more fun as a masters athlete to get 5 races in a day now, isn't it?
Mhm.
And not be dead to the world. We don't need eighth graders doing 2Ks. We just don't. It's just not unnecessary. It would be better for them to line up to the docks 4 times and have to get into the starting docks 4 times. That's actually true. It would be much more beneficial to their long-term ability to race well. It's really funny watching the singles in the U.S. who maybe not race the singles as much back into the starting
Start
gates at
pumping. Yep.
nationals is a little entertaining because some of them don't know what they're doing at nationals. Now, how much does that affect their race? A ton. They are in a different state of arousal when they are struggling to back into those things, as opposed to focus on the next moment, which is the start. So even things like that, I would love to see, and that's when you see every you know white male my age or older just go, "Oh no, you're going to change the distance on us," and I'm like, "Yes, please change the distance so that people can get more experience, have more fun, right? Be able to compete in more races." I would love to see a mixed double become
Mhm.
at every competitive level, including the
Yeah.
Olympics. Here's I think rowing has a unique opportunity at the Olympics for the mixed double, because it's the only sport where it makes sense almost for them to get in the boat together, right?
Hmm.
One woman, one man.
Mhm.
Could you imagine the two Kiwi singles hopping in a single against the two? How fun would that be? They've done their singles races, whatever. It doesn't matter. But imagine if you want to talk about the Olympic movement, and then we could claw one race back away from to the Olympics and get another one, right? So but I think there's a huge opportunity and that redefines how we look at what competition is. And I think if we looked at what that means for every level, because that's what
Mm.
we want to meet the athlete at whatever the level they are developmentally, to keep them around forever. And that changes throughout the course of their athletic career. Their goals change, their life changes. You know, being a masters athlete is a challenge, to fit it into everyday life when you don't have somebody cooking all your meals for you and doing all your laundry. I get it, but I would love to see, um, systematically across the board a change of how we approach competition.
I think that would be very interesting. And yeah, I can't help but say that's an exploration that I personally would be interested in diving into.
Mixed
If
double
people,
2032.
yeah. Okay, you and me, you
Let's
have to
go.
get fit
Yes.
there.
I'm not going to make it. I'll be out. I'm out. I got young ones coming up behind me. They'll take care of it.
So, true story. When the World Masters Games was announced that it was coming to New Zealand in 2017, I went to the son of one of our board members in the club who was just coming out of the national under 21 team. And I asked him if he'd like to asked him first if he was going to be 27 in
Mhm.
2017. He
Yeah.
gave me a very quizzical look. And then I said, would you like to do a mixed double with me?
Yeah.
And I got accused of being a cougar, but
Yeah.
actually, why not? Get
Yeah.
pulled
It's
down
a
the
fast
course
boat.
by a strong
Mhm.
young man.
It'd be fun. I wouldn't say no. I mean,
It didn't
mhm,
happen, but hey, I can dream.
indeed.
Matt, If people want to find out more about your coaching model, long-term athlete development, where can they find information?
Don't go to our website. I'll say I haven't touched that in about 3 years, just because we have all of our athletes. We're kind of very focused on our community, but as a result, I'm really focused on getting their stories out. In my late age here, I've kind of pivoted to social media. Before owning my own business, you couldn't find me on any of these things, but I've realized how important they were at conveying what we do to the parents and the families,
Mhm.
because they don't get the opportunity to see what they do, and so it was a real practical, actually, decision. Like, hey, they're investing a lot in what we do. They're paying a premium for a product for a lot of reasons. I really want them to understand how good it is out here.
Yeah.
How much we love what we do, and so that kind of. And also, I want to explain what makes us different. Being a
Mhm.
family-owned business is probably the thing that drives everything around here. Because this business has to survive our family. Like, it has to be the thing that it's centered around. So we always talk about, we have like 9 family values that are like in hierarchy, and they drive everything. Those are actually on the website, I believe, too. But the big thing is that probably the Instagram. I don't have we do have a TikTok. I just haven't figured TikTok out yet. One of these days when the kids get older, I'll have to go find them, right? Like, that's the thing. That's where the attention will be. But the Instagram's been really kind of powerful for us to get that message out, because there's something that we love in the whether it's a photo or a video with some Pearl Jam in the background. And then in the caption, I'm able to explain what we're doing a little bit, or just throw the lyrics into the Pearl Jam song. It's literally one of those two things. Sometimes I'm busy, but yeah, I would say and I'm using that as a platform to also, you know, voice some of the things I would hope we are able to have some impact in changing too. So our parents are kind of aware of that. They've been around. You start with us early. It takes a while for you to get to know us with the over time, and so that's how we're able to bridge that kind of understanding divide, because I really think it's hard to understand what we do around here.
What is the Instagram called?
It's at Seattle Scullers. Yeah, keep it simple. Um, and it's been really interesting. Actually, we have a couple shout out to I have like a handful of Kiwi coaches that actually have been really supportive, like have reached out to the DMs and all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
Because I really think the Kiwis do a great job with coaching philosophy and their development pathway, and so they see a lot of what they're doing in us, which I take as a compliment.
Well, that's really good to know. Matt, it's been a delight having you on the show. Thank you so much for your insight, for your wonderful exploratory attitudes to the world around you and the situations that you come up against. Certainly for me, that's going to be a learning that I can take away. And please, everybody, follow Matt and the Seattle Scullers on Instagram.
Appreciate you, Rebecca. Thank you for your time.
This has been Rowing Chat with me, Rebecca Caro, and till next time.